Oh my gosh. I love I think I talked to you about this in the first message that I sent, but I really love the short that you did, the Welcome to Life short. One of the reasons I especially love it is because of the parents. It's a weird detail, but most stories that show like immigrant families or immigrant parents usually paint the parents in this negative light, like cast them as the weird or the strange characters. Maybe I'm just watching the wrong stuff, but your show is one of the only ones that I know that actually shows these parents as people that actually love their kid. I just really love that.
Thank you so much. That's so interesting. Like, I think you're the first person to mention that to me. But like, um, you're right that there isn't a lot of programming that shows that. Like, there's been a like only I don't know. The only thing I can think of that of like of a recent example was just like Master of None. I think his mom was really like a sweet character, but like it was kind of in a a very
Yeah.
personal way.
But yeah, seriously, that means a lot to me, especially like my parents are immigrants from India, so it was like, oh my gosh, nice parents, not like the strict Asian stereotype that keeps popping up. When you encounter a problem, usually what's your first thought?
It depends on what kind of problem it is, but I think my first thought is usually to like, this sounds weird, but like figure out what it's about by like listening to whoever is involved in it, you know? Like, and then if it's something to do with like a problem somebody, I mean, I guess it's still the same because I was about to say like if I do some work and a person has an issue that, with something that I've done in my work, um, it's usually just trying to get to the bottom of like what's the core of what they're thinking, what's the core of like what's the problem for them, and how do I should listen to what they're saying, but also try to figure out like, is that, how do I want to approach solving it? Um, and if it's something where it's something external to me, where it's like other people that have a problem with each other or a problem with somebody else, it's really just trying to get like the right picture of what's the actual issue that's happening here and how can I best help? Like sometimes it's like the best help is just to listen, but sometimes it's you have to take a beat to figure out what to do.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. What were you scared of? What were you scared of at the start of your career, and has that changed?
um I think at the beginning of my career I was mostly probably scared of being unemployed, to be honest. Like you know Cal Arts is a pretty expensive school. So I
Yeah.
think like um even though I did have a lot of help from my parents and I had scholarships, um it's an amount of like money where like once you get out you feel really really nervous about like how am I going to pay back that like because I still had money that I owed. So I think there was kind of like a thought of like, well, if I'm unemployed, I'm not going to have health care and I'm not going to be able to do stuff that I enjoy doing. So it was just like trying to stay employed or trying to find what job uh I would fit the best in. Um yeah, I think like honestly it that like sort of like fear of having to like have a job to kind of like justify like what you did or what you do. It took a really long time for like, I mean, even still now I think once in a while like I'll probably think like, uh-oh, like what if after this there's not like
Mhm.
like I don't get this job. It's like, yeah, it's weird. It's like a very big driver I think for people who went to Cal Arts that like don't don't come from like billionaires.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's one of the reasons why I didn't go to art school. Um,
Smart.
what are you scared? Thanks. Hopefully it's a good idea. um, what are you scared of now?
uh I'm trying to think like if I'm scared of it or like because there's a lot of stuff where I'm frustrated at it, but I'm not necessarily scared of it. I think one fear that I would have now is more about like, I was really whether it's like performative or not, I was really excited with a lot of like the statements that some of the studios made following most of what was happening last year. And just like the ways that people made sort of like, in my mind, they made more of a commitment to kind of like do do more diverse programming, hire more diverse people, like all the way up to the top.
Mhm.
Um, and I think like my fear is that people are gonna like just sort of resign themselves to this complacency that existed before all that. And that just sort of tends to happen as a fixture of things like going back to normal. So my actual hope is that it doesn't really just reset back to like a normal. I think it's like my hope is just that people are true to what they said, like especially the people that have the power to change it and to make those decisions lasting and make them meaningful. I hope that's what they do.
Yeah, literally, same here, please. I remember being I think I was in middle school when Welcome to My Life came out. I was so like struck by the dialogue. Like it was the first show that I actually saw these characters talk like actual people with all the ums and the ahs and you know non-showy vocal inflections, and the kids acted like kids, not just tiny, small, goofy adults. It was just fantastic. As an actor, it was especially interesting. Even on stuff that is like real and grounded shows, there's still an element of performance. But your shows like City of Ghost and Welcome to My Life don't have that at all. You mentioned being inspired by like the carefreeness of amateur filmmaking, and the stuff you make really like shows that vulnerable and it's like real and authentic and it's just beautiful. I'm really curious cuz I think your brother was the main character. Yeah, what was it like to direct your family?
um it was really interesting, like in some respects it's like uh when you involve like your family, whether it's like your siblings, or like if you have your own kids, or for me it's like with my husband and his family or any of that, I think you're always like y- you're kind of like walking that line of like you're combining your family life with your work, and sometimes it, like for me, I know I get nervous about that because there's a way that you're different and that your family is different to you than like a coworker, or like even like a fellow artist collaborator. And like I don't know what everyone else's families are like, but mine is pretty like eclectic. And with that comes like um emotional people, who like, but who are really funny, which is I think what comes across in the short. But like yeah, it does create sometimes difficult things. Like some of the funny versions of that are like when I first was making like the short that I made of this when I was like at Cal Arts. I remember when I went home to like talk to my mom and my brother and record them. When I first started recording my mom, she thought she was like a regular person, and the rest of the family were all monsters. And I kind of realized it while I was recording her, and I had to be like, no, 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 it's you're you're also a monster. That would be so weird. Like, why would Doug be just the only one? And then we
Mhm.
had a good laugh about it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it was like a direct it's just like a direct representation, like, really literally of, like, where all my work comes from. Like, it always definitely comes from me, and it comes from my friends and myself and the experiences that I enjoy, like, talking about most of the time. Um, yeah, and, like, I just that's what I find the funniest and the best about people is, like, their personalities that, like, you could never get an actor to replicate. Like, I could never
Yeah,
really
yeah.
truly get another actress to be you. Like, if you know, so it's like you should just put the people who if it's possible, you should put the people that you picture when you write your stuff into that project, you know?
That is so, like, I cannot, like, it's so new and so, like, different. I've never seen it. It's just so, like, fascinating. Um, how did you I have directed my brother for a couple of shorts that, like, we did together, and it was interesting. How do you communicate, um some family members, they might, like, overperform because 'cause they're like, "Oh, I'm acting how I felt like that." How do you communicate that, like, "No, just actually, like, tone it down?"
Um, I think to be honest, I think it's like, it's something that I actually feel like I had to do sometimes with people who weren't even, like, my family, like, 'cause, um, first with, like, anybody, like, actors or non-actors, I feel like the minute that you start telling them that you're recording them or that you, like, um it's worse if you're filming them, it's better if you're doing it by voice, but there's still this aspect even if with voice because, like, you have equipment around them most of the time, um and so, like, I feel like there's always this initial period where people are uncomfortable and they're really nervous because they realize their performance is being recorded or they like it's even like when people leave a like a voicemail message, like the amount of people that hate doing that, they hate then hearing it. Like some people won't listen to it after they've done it. Um, so I think like part of it is a lot like allowing some amount of time to get that person into a point where they're not like feeling nervous about it, where they're feeling a little bit more relaxed and able to be themselves.
Did you film
Um,
it? Sorry for interrupting. Did you film it
no.
in the recording studio, or did you, like, we have, like, a home studio, or, like, you put a blanket over your head and call it good?
um, some of it was in like an actual like recording booth because for Welcome to My Life they had like Cartoon Network has their own recording area so
Mhm.
that it's easier for them for shows and stuff. Um, there were some lines where like once we had to get it again, I kind of just had to call my brother up and be like, "Can you use mom's Zoom recorder to record yourself saying this one short line that we need?" Um, and that worked fine, but I think like uh, yeah, that I mean that kind of leads really well into like the second part, which is like have as many people handling um like kind of like the tech part of it if it's possible, even if it's just like another person sitting there with headphones or if it's like you're sitting there with headphones and you get like one other person to help, communicate what you want. Because I was thinking like when I was doing more of it on my own, like when it was just sort of me at home recording my brother or like me at home recording whoever I end up recording for some of the like experiments that I've done, like uh it's hard to be doing all of the things and also then directing your family member because like inevitably like I would start getting irritated at like oh my levels are messed up and like now I got to figure that out, but I also have to make sure that I like that answer you gave me, but I don't have like 5 hours to sit here doing this. So it was kind of just figuring out like how do I find the right people to like delegate some of some of these things too so that I could be a little bit better, like, of a listener to what they're saying, and then, like, have a little bit more thought other than, like, overwhelming frustration coming out at them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How did you communicate that tone to either the people you were directing or the people you were working with? Because I'm sure when, as I was saying, there are shows where they ask you to be like real and grounded, but they just mean like the Hollywood version of real and grounded.
Um, some of it for City of Ghosts was really just, meeting the people at least once ahead of time, I think, like, and at that time, like, it was all in person, it would be making every effort to kind of, like, introduce myself to them in person um so that, like, it gets a little bit of that nervous, like, sometimes people will overperform because yeah, it's just an expression of their nervousness. So I think, like, anything that I could do to, like, shorten that uncomfortable space so that it was comfortable. And then, I think, like, having my documentary producer friend, Joanne Shen, like, she was so good about, uh, recognizing, like, kind of like those gems that people will say where they'll 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 mention something and you kind of know it's like a gateway into this other neat story that they have to tell, or like she would remember something from having done a pre-interview with them so that she would know how to bring it up so they would talk about it. um, Occasionally it was making sure that we were recording like most of the time that they were there so that sometimes even in the in between moments where they were trying to figure stuff out, uh, you can find, if you listen for it, you can find really good little character moments that like that represent them. You know, like
Yeah,
I always think about it, but like there was just this like really nice energy between JMD, the guy who played the drummer Ghost, and then uh, Eva and Tomiko, who played Sonia on the Lemert Park episode, and there was just this point where like Tomiko was trying to write out some like just on the spot rhymes to read, like that she was gonna like make up, like I mean she was literally like acting like I'm making up this poem as I'm going because this drumming ghost won't leave me alone. And she had scribbled stuff out on a notepad and we were just still recording, and like JMD wasn't supposed to be like saying any lines, but he said to her like, "Oh, could I see what you got there? Like, I'm an expert at reading rapper chicken scratches." And I think we all laughed after that. And I like it's like you save those in your mind. And I was like, later when my editor was putting together the animatic, I was like, "Can you find this part where he says this thing? Because like I don't know where, but like I want us to use that somewhere. Like even if it's not part of like the part where the kids are recording him, like it sounds like such a really like it's true that he is good at that. So I want to figure out a way to like create a scene that embodies that." And so there's a tiny little scene where he says that to Eva, and yeah, I'm just happy to like do that.
that is so wonderful. I remember reading that in one of the interviews and being like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm really curious, are the episodes, do you like outline them roughly and then like an actual interview you just ask them and then see what stories you can make out of it? Or is it like a full-on script?
Um, the first way that you said was pretty much how he did it. It was like an outline, but like it was heavily informed by like we kind of tried to map out possible episodes that could happen in, you know, whichever neighborhoods. It was like a kind of like a grid, because I think initially we thought maybe we would do 10 episodes, but then it just sort of like we figured out what the magic number would be to be able to afford to do the show basically. Um, and then so it was like, okay, out of this big group that we have, let's whittle it down to like the top six that we want to do. Um, and then it was like, okay, my documentary producer is gonna research a ton. She like she was always like, throwing new ideas at me for like the next one coming up, and we would write these out, or I would write these outlines, and then I would work with an animation writer, to kind of get them to be like what, people are used to getting as an outline and not some random scribbling of just my thoughts. But like again, it was like very like malleable. Like we'd sort of have to, I mean, just by the nature of like the way we were doing it, we had to be really, really flexible to um like I don't know, it's just I guess stuff that like isn't normally the issue. Like some of it was like, if we can't get this one person to do the voice, is this still really the story that we would be able to do? Because like the interview with this other person, if we replace them, it's going to be a different kind of interview. So we would have to figure out how to adjust the story to accommodate like who we were or weren't able to get as voices.
Wow, that is like so interesting. The story and everything. I watched it all in one night and it just it flows so beautifully and organically. Like I feel like I'm watching I mean I'm going to mention it in the next question, but it's like it radiates this comfort, but it's like so deep and real and just wonderful. It's just really great.
Thank you.
Fight.